here in Lesson 6, Structural Clues. Homework assignment number 2. As usual, we'll throw in a quick review of the course so far. Number 1, we learned in lesson number 1, topic sentences are paramount. The topic sentence will be the big picture for the whole paragraph. Below is going to be details to support that idea. Make sure that you realize that what you're reading below the topic sentence somehow has to be related back to that main topic sentence. So if you get lost, refer back to your topic sentence frequently. Number 2, the lesson we worked on there was Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo, once again, is saying the same concept throughout the passage, but using different vocabulary words. Make sure that you realize you will come across a word or a concept that you're not familiar with. Once again, quickly look back at your topic sentence and make sure you understand that that somehow has to be related back to the topic sentence. Lesson number 3, we went on to talk about the good stinky rule. The good stinky rule is the author has a hidden opinion about the subject matter from the topic sentence. The topic sentence, as we mentioned earlier, is a personal opinion that needs to be supported by details. If there's a personal opinion, we can assume that the author has a positive or a negative or a neutral opinion about that subject matter. Most of the time it will be positive or negative. Neutral, why would you write a passage that you have no feelings about? I would rather write something I have some passion. Either I like it a lot or I dislike it a lot. So keep that kind of in mind. Good stinky rule says you come across specific words in the passage, we can label them positive or negative. ACT, MCAs, college teachers, high school teachers, they love to ask about the tone of the passage, the author's attitude, and so forth. Make sure that you use the good stinky rule to answer questions like that. Lesson number 4. Lesson 4, we talked about the author's timeline. The author's timeline is basically a continuum. They will give you, most of the time, they'll start off a passage with background information, old school, how it was developed, where it was developed, and so forth, and then they will progressively move down the timeline to more current issues where you are now and potentially talk about the future. Keep in mind that the reason we want to keep the timeline in the front of our head is we're trying to be able to predict what the author is going to do next. If you understand you're here, then we're going to need to get to here, and then eventually we're trying to get to here. You can kind of follow the storyline a little bit better. Following the storyline means you're engaged. That means you're going to be actively pursuing deeper meaning, and then also you're going to be able to remember things better. Lesson number 5. Lesson number 5, we talked about cultural coding. Cultural coding is taking information from the environment, previous places that we've learned things, movies, school, mom, dad, teachers, walking around at the mall, family vacations, and so forth, and taking what we've seen before and applying it into another part of something that we're unfamiliar with. For example, this is a passage about nature. Well, maybe you went on nature walks. Maybe you watch movies in nature. Maybe you had a family vacation to some exotic place where you visited some gardens or something. Take that information and apply it into here so it makes more sense. It makes it feel like this is important to you. Oh, yeah. You can take this information and add it to your experience, and that means you'll be able to apply all of that in the future to a new passage. Cultural coding, taking information from other places and applying it to something that we're not familiar with, like a new passage. And finally, structural clues. Structural clues are words like road signs or landmarks that tell you where you are in the passage. If you understand that the structural clue here, for example, says, for instance, this is going to be an example of what they just said up here. Up here is the topic sentence, so here's an example of the topic sentence and the personal opinion. Bam! See how easy that is? There it is. It's a quick overview. Let's jump on in and take a look at this passage. First things first, the title, of course, you always want to read, Patterns in Nature. We look at the topic sentence. It says, many living things have an internal time clock. It's our topic sentence. Topic sentence says internal time clock. So we know the whole passage is going to be about an internal time clock. We come over here and it says pattern, an internal time clock. A clock is on a pattern of 12 hours. Rhythm, a rhythm is on a pattern, and a pattern is on a clock. Boom, 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 Scooby-Doo style. You come over here, circadian rhythm, you know now is going to be an internal time clock. You come over here, sleep is a noun. It goes back to internal time clock. You look over here, certain flowers probably have an internal time clock. You go over here, boom, 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 boom. In the morning, internal time clock. Flower, internal time clock. Moonflower, internal time clock. You look over here, pink and white refers probably to flowers. This passage in general, you can assume, is talking about nature has internal time clocks in flowers. Bam! See what I did? I didn't even read this. I just kind of understood that that's probably what was going to happen based upon 6 lessons that we talked about. Now, we are going to do another review of all 6 lessons by simply answering the questions. Let's come over here. We're going to take a look at problem number 1. Problem number 1 deals with this lesson, structural clues. There are 5 structural clues in this passage. Let's go ahead and search them out. We're going to find the word, write it here, and then we're going to give a quick explanation of what it's doing. Let's get started. First things first, get the red pen out. Here we see the first structural clue over here is for instance. For instance is going to give you an example of what they just said here. There are collapsing and uncollapsing appendages of these flowers, and that is going to be set on what they said earlier, the circadian rhythm. So these circadian rhythm sets up when they open and close the appendages. For example, here is an example of pretty much the same thing. That's 2. We come down over here and we see that there's a structural clue yet. This is a flip-flopper. That means we're going to switch from one direction to another. My favorite flower is California poppy. The amazing poppy opens at 1. Yet we find other flowers that bloom even later and 1 p.m. So those are opposite. 1 p.m. and later, that's opposite. So that's a structural clue. 1, 2, 3. We find, for example, that's 4. Here's an example that follows. Come down over here and let's see if we can find another structural clue in here. Did we miss one? There might be one up here that's kind of a wacky one. One of the most commonly known, that's a structural clue that's not super evident, but that's something that gives you similar to a structural clue. And let's see. That is it for our structural clues. Let's move on to question number 2. Clear the screen, scroll on down. Question number 2. From this paragraph, you can conclude. What do we conclude? Look at the bottom down here. They close when the sunlight breaches their delicate petals. What are they talking about? They're talking about the moonflower. And the moonflower, why are they opening and closing their petals? Because there is an internal time clock. See what we did? Here, went all the way back up to the topic sentence. And the internal time clock is called a circadian rhythm. So what can we conclude about nature, flowers, and the circadian rhythm? Let's take a look at A, process of elimination. We'll start crossing stuff out. All have to do with sleep. Well, we saw that it has to do with appendages opening and closing, so that's not true. B says all the same in all living things. It's not all the same because humans sleep, flowers open and close their petals, so that's not true. C says are all about when flowers open and close. That's incorrect because we saw earlier one of our examples was about humans and sleep. So that's incorrect. And D says affect how living things act. Circadian rhythm, it is an internal time clock. That's the correct answer. Boom. D. Let's go ahead, take a look at problem number 3. Problem number 3 comes from lesson number 2, the Scooby-Doo rule. The Scooby-Doo rule or Scooby-Doo technique, what's another word for appendages? Let's go ahead and take a look at that on line 6. And what we want to do here, basically, kids, a good idea when you see the word, probably have a look at the sentence above, have a sentence below, and then start thinking about using the Scooby-Doo as well as good stinky rule. Certain flowers, for instance, have a pattern of opening and closing their appendages. What are we going to... Flowers have something that opens and closes. Cultural coding says that's probably going to be like petals. Okay, if you look down over here, it says they open and close their petals. Boom, right there. Appendages and petals, Scooby-Doo. So let's find an answer choice that says something close to that. Scroll on down. We can go ahead and write petals. We can go ahead and write parts of the flower. We could write maybe leaves on there. Something to do with that. Basically, you saw what we just did is look at the surrounding area and reword it. 4. Let's go ahead and scroll on down. First things first, when we look at problem number 4, it says, what reflects the writer's attitude towards the water lily in this paragraph? What do we think of the water lily? We're going to use the good stinky rule on that. Let's find where it talks about the water lily. And the water lily comes from up here. So here it is. And the water lily opens at 11 p.m. So this just basically talks about flowers. This is an example. Dandelions open their petals in the morning. Morning glories, wondrous petals at 10 a.m. And the water lily opens at 11. So it looks like the author in general believes that flowers are beautiful because we saw that up here, wondrous petals dealing with the morning glory. So I feel like this answer choice here is going to be positive. Let's go ahead and take a look at the answer choices. Use a good stinky rule to cross some stuff out. A says neutral. Does the author think that flowers and circadian rhythm are neutral? Probably not, because it's wondrous. B says admiring, wonderful and admiring, that goes together. C says cross, which is a Scooby-Doo for mad. And mad is going to be, mad or angry is going to be a negative word, so we can cross that one out. And blissful, blissful is a very positive word. I think it's a little bit too positive. Put a dot by that. Admiring is going to be closer to wonderful. You see what we did is we looked at that word and then we related that word to another word that was in the sentence just above or below, connected those, and then we connected the correct answer to either one of those. 5. We're going to take a look at the concept of cultural coding. Cultural coding came from section 5, lesson 5. Using this concept, cultural coding, think of something else that you've learned about that has some type of circadian rhythm. What else has a circadian rhythm? How about bears? Bears hibernate in the wintertime. That might be a good one. Anything that's got some kind of a clock. The sun and the moon. The sun shines during the day and then it goes away at night. Sunsets. The moon has a cycle. All of that revolves around the concept of a circadian rhythm. Number 6. We move down to 6. We're going to use some vocabulary stuff here. In 6, if you look at 6, we're asked about the word breeches on line 15. Let's go ahead and use a couple things. Scooby-Doo and good stinky rule. So breeches is at the bottom. They close when the sunlight breaches their petals. First of all, we're talking about the subject matter of moonflowers. So they're going to close their petals. Since they're called a moonflower, they will close. They'll probably open when the moon is out, and when the sun comes up, they're going to close. So breeches would be another Scooby-Doo based upon what we just saw there for closing. We look over here and start crossing some stuff out. Double pass system. Illuminates. Illuminates means to shine. That's not really closing, so that's out. Infringes. That's kind of like, you know, you're overstepping your boundaries. That's kind of doesn't really make sense. Ruptures. Ruptures means breaking. And penetrates. So penetrate is the sun is going to penetrate those petals. Go back up here and see, that's probably the better answer choice. D, penetrates. When the sunlight penetrates their delicate petals. So that's the best answer choice there. D for problem number 6. 7, good stinky rule again. Let's go in here. We're going to take a look at some words that suggest positive or negative. We come over here and start in at the top. Pull out the red pen. Any words that are positive, we put a plus above them. Living, that's a positive word. Daily patterns. I feel like a pattern seems fairly positive. Commonly, that feels like a positive word. Rhythm, humans follow. Circadian, plant organisms. follow, collapsing, that feels like it's negative, following, that feels like it is pattern, follow, all kinds of words that have some tone on here. Petals, for example, dandelions close their petals in the morning. Open, wondrous, that's positive. Water lily opens, when you open something, usually positive. Morning, that would be positive. Favorite, that would be positive. Amazing, that would be positive. Beautiful, that's positive. Come over here, blooming, that's going to be positive. Musty, that would be negative. And beautiful pink, positive. Quickly, open at night. Quickly, I'd say probably positive on that one. Entire evening, close when the sunlight breaches. They're delicate. Something's delicate, maybe negative. If you look in here, the author has a hidden tone. Go ahead and look. For the most part, you see lots and lots of positive words in there. Why? Because we're dealing with nature and flowers. Good stinky rule, kids. Let's move on. On to number 8, big picture question. We're going to have a quick look at the topic sentence, main idea of this paragraph. Once again, you saw from the topic sentence up here, we have internal time clocks in nature, and we call those circadian rhythms. So we're going to have to Scooby-Doo that. If you look over here, start crossing out answer choices. Usually you can cross 2 out right away. Flowers are organisms that sleep like humans. That's a distortion. It talks about flowers and humans and sleep, but they kind of twist it around a little bit. Distortion for letter A, we can cross that one out. B, living things follow a pattern similar to a rhythm. That's completely on target. That's exactly what their topic sentence says. Put a dot by it. C, flowers open and close their petals at different times during the day. It's true, but that's not from the topic sentence. That's from the details. So that can't be the big picture. And D, circadian rhythms are patterns of movement in the environment. Well, it's not necessarily a pattern of movement. So that is going to be a distortion as well. The better answer choice here is going to be letter B for problem number 8. Let's go ahead, clear the screen, and take a look at problem number 9. Number 9, it talks about the author's timeline. How does the author present this timeline? If you go back up here, we'll take a look. We introduce the subject matter, internal time clocks, or a circadian rhythm in nature. Then they start talking about flowers. So where's the timeline? You come over here, and you see that we start off at 10 a.m. We start with early flowers, 10 a.m., 11 a.m., then we go to 1 p.m., and then we go to moonflowers, which you can assume is in the evening. That is our timeline, and that is putting everything together. Lessons 1 through 6. Kids, lesson number 6, homework assignment number 2, done. Mark it off. We will see you in the next video. Bye for now.